Hey everyone, welcome back to the Herbalist Hour. Today I'm joined by the Seed Sisters. That's Kazzla and Fiona. So welcome to the show.
Thank you
very much. Nice to be here.
Welcome to the Herbalist Hour. This is where community gather, merging the power of people and flowers, the sweet and the bitter to the salty, the sour. Umami, it's time for the Herbalist Hour.
Yeah, I can't exactly remember how we first kind of came in contact. I want to say it was via email, but then I kind of delved into your world, your YouTube channel, and y'all were kind enough to send me your book, the Sensory Herbal Handbook. Is that right? Did I get that? Awesome. Actually, oh yeah, I have it right here in front of me. Here we go.
Oh, there you go.
Yep. So the Sensory Herbal Handbook. But first, I'd like to get to know the Seed Sisters a little bit more. Curious how you two met and then kind of formed your business and everything. We could start with you, Kazzla.
Okay, yeah, well, we met at the turn of the millennium in the armpit of London, Ponders End, while we were studying at university there. Yeah, we met on the first day of the degree in herbal medicine. It was a 4-year full-time degree course, and it's quite freaky when you first start university. You just don't really know what you're going into, and we were pleased to meet kindred spirits in one another, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a bit of an interesting university to find ourselves, and the way that the course was taught was alongside sports science. It was taught by a lot of allopathic medics. There was a lot of clinical medicine, and you know, we both love biology and the chemistry and science of plants. We love it. But there was a huge sort of part of that training that was missing for us, that we sort of filled in for each other, which was the skipping around in fields, being or playing with plants, really. So
yeah, we were really lucky. We were really lucky to have one another, because, you know, with university, it's a modular style of education. So every 3 months you are given a different module. So, for example, pathology for 3 months alongside materia medica. So we were able to form a study group, and with a couple of other lovely herb students. In our study group did consist of us out in the fields actually making tinctures and various different elements into that process, which, as Fi said, it was devoid from the magical aspect of our craft. Loads and loads of the science, but we drew on all of that magic alongside in our time off and in our studies.
Yeah. So first of all, university, it sounds like, is where you learned herbalism. Is that true?
Yeah, it was a phytotherapy course, so clinical herbal medicine. Yeah.
That's so cool. I was going to bring this up later in the show, but I think now might be a good time. I really like about herbalism and herbalists, the ability to combine, say, the science aspects with the more like quote unquote woo-woo or spiritual side. I always think those make the best herbalists, because we don't really know everything that's happening behind the scenes. So I'm just kind of curious how the both of you balance your science background with your more spiritual approach to herbalism. And yeah, Fiona, if you want to start, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we felt very, very lucky, actually, because we were both working with herbs in our teens as well. So we both traveled a lot. We had a lot of sort of linked networks before we met each other, of friends and the wider kind of traveling community, you know, going to events and festivals. And as soon as, you'll know this, as soon as anyone hears that you're into plants or herbalism, they start telling you all their problems and wanting you to. And as young teenagers, you know, you have that sense of freedom. And we were working with plants, you know, in that way before we got to university. And what we did see was that some people that had an interest in plants but maybe not a lot of experience with them, actually came out of the degree a little bit fearful of using plants and becoming a herbalist. And there was sometimes a transitional period of a couple of years. But we had this, because we'd had this love of using the plants and working with the plants in that kind of magical way beforehand, it wasn't like there wasn't any battle between that for us. It just, we naturally were working in that way. And we're both, we both love being in nature and always have loved being in nature. And I think when you're in nature, you are surrounded by that awe and wonder that is really the foundation of magical practice for us with the plants is like, wow, that feeling. And that can't necessarily be explained, even if you can explain what's going on with the plant chemistry and the chlorophyll and but watching a seed sprout, or that in itself is magical. And I think it's allowing the space and time to appreciate that and keep bringing ourselves back to that, really.
Yeah. And also, like, even the way you pose the question, the woo-woo, because our current society, here in the UK, and sounds like where you are as well, there is a certain amount of, there's a lack of respect for magic. And actually another social group that we're part of, which is the psychedelic renaissance, and a lot of psychiatrists, psychologists, and people who are studying various different plant and chemical psychedelics. There's a branch of that, a stream, where people study parapsychology and actually magic and what it is, and the history of the suppression and the cultural fears surrounding what magic is, that has brought us to this moment in time where it's just looked at as something lesser, and it's a travesty. And I was lucky enough to be brought up by a very passionate plants woman who taught me from a very early age that we speak to our plants, and plants enjoy the conversation. And she called all of the cuttings her babies, and so that was very much indoctrinated within me, that the plants and nature is God. So my grandmother wasn't a traditionally religious woman, but she believed that nature is God and always taught us all that. So very, very strongly spiritual. And we've brought our children up in that way as well, to ritualize the passing of the moons, to watch all of the cosmic movements and how they impact our day-to-day practical lives. And they do so greatly. And I used to be brown owl, or arcala. So I used to run, in England we have scouts, brownies and guides, which is where groups of children go off weekly and they're taught various different tasks and they get badges. And for a time I was here in my village leading a group of 7-year-olds, and I remember really clearly teaching them about the moon and talking to them about how the moon affects the tides. And I was told off by several of the parents for teaching them woo-woo spiritual rubbish. We know that it's not woo-woo spiritual rubbish, real underpinnings of what goes on our planet and the wider universe. But people don't know that. There really are many people, I don't even want to put a number on it, who don't know that the moon waxes and wanes. And that is the level of kind of knowledge that we're dealing with a lot of the time. So yeah, it's really important to bridge the magical and the scientific, so that we can stand our ground when people want to kind of bat you away and think that you're a woo-woo nutter.
Oh, I love it. Thank you both. And I hope it didn't come off as any sort of like disrespect, honestly, because I use woo woo almost like tongue in cheek. It's kind of like just it's also kind of fun to say. But me personally, I've also had, lots of experience with, say, various religions and spiritual practices, along with, say, psychedelics and so forth. So yeah, I'm totally or I'm not totally aware, but I'm quasi connected to the spiritual realm, and I appreciate it all. And like I was saying, I really love when herbalists are able to combine, say, the science with the spiritual or woo woo or whatever. Also, have you ever heard of the movie The Notebook?
Oh yeah.
Okay, there's a great line in there where the old guy says science ends where God begins. And I just always really resonated with that, because I'm like, I feel like science is going to continuously prove a lot of these like spiritual knowings that a lot of us may already know. But thank you for going more in depth on that. I was kind of curious, shifting gears a little bit, where the name the seed Sistaz comes from, and is that A in your name a reference to, like, say, anarchy?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's start with you, Fiona.
Yeah. So it's a it's a story that we often say for around the campfire, actually.
Oh.
The development of the name Seed Sistaz, but we don't mind a bit of tongue in cheek, because actually we completely embrace that as a caricature, because it brings magic or magical awareness into an accessible realm. And when we were traveling after university with our, we'd done a 4-year full-time scientific degree, and we were there on the market stalls with our potions, that at that time, actually, the law here was just starting to say you can't sell remedies in that way, that you have to have a consultation behind a closed door in order to sell a remedy to someone. Mm-hmm. So we were there with these medicines that we'd produced, and people were coming and asking us to prove what was going on, what we were doing. And we had all, printouts of medical papers, and we just started to feel exhausted with the whole process. We were like, well, what are we trying to prove here? Someone that comes and asks to be proved to, or the feeling of it was that there was a closed door that they wanted you to break down. And we were like, actually, there's people that are curious over here who are missing out on this knowledge. So we were traveling with the circus, and they started calling us the circus witches. There was a lot of mending sprained ligaments and all the rest of it. But we decided to fully embrace becoming the wild and wicked witches. And we hung bones outside our space. We got a massive cauldron that we'd put in front of it. And then we'd still have all of our herbal preparations, and people would come in for consultations. But the only people that would cross the threshold were those that dared, and no one asked us to prove anything anymore. And it was just so liberating. And we'd don big pointy hats and our witches' garb. Do you want to take it from here, Kaz?
Yeah, so we travelled for many years as the Wild and Wicked Witches, and it was great. But we started to go to events where, as Fi said, only those who dared would cross the threshold, and a few events hardly anyone dared. And we found ourselves at a weekend, a bit like a team building retreat for people that run community projects. That was at the Eden Project here in Cornwall. And we had an inspirational speaker come and address us on the Saturday evening. And he had spearheaded a particular campaign called Surfers Against Sewage in the 90s, where a group of surfers came together to raise the profile of the fact that British beaches were just filthy because all the sewage was floating straight directly into the sea. And he explained that if you want a campaign to work, you need 100% of the populace behind you. You need everyone to be on board. And something within us clicked, and that the Wild and Wicked Witches died. We left them behind. And there's a whole nother story of how we came to the term seed sisters, which involves psychedelic breast milk, but
okay.
that's a play in itself.
We'll save that for the campfire.
Yeah.
But actually, on that, we had, as well as this tongue-in-cheek Wild and Wicked Witches, we had started to feel the weight of that history and that oppression. And it didn't mean that we were leaving behind wanting to reintroduce magic as something that people didn't have to ask if it was white magic in order to feel safe or comfortable with it. But actually it was this weight of kind of, we felt really angry and really cross, and we felt quite repressed even within our herbal practice with the new regulations that were coming in. And we were being challenged continuously by the kind of societal norms and legislation that was coming into place. And we felt this weight of history carrying this Wild and Wicked Witches. And actually what we decided was not to leave that anger and that drive, but to transform it into creative, positive activism that was just as thought-provoking, but maybe less immediately challenging. And becoming the Seed Sisters really enabled that complete opening up for us into, because we run a social enterprise. We apply for funding to the government, to the government and non-governmental organizations, and we help communities and all the rest of it. And we didn't want to alienate any of that, or that to restrict what we could do out there in the world anymore.
But yeah, we did insert a certain sigil or symbol into our names. And you correctly recognised us for anarchists. We are anarchists, and to us, anarchy means autonomy, self-governance, and order within chaos. So we live by our herbs.
Yeah, I actually just noticed it this morning. Somehow it escaped me this entire time. I just like, oh, that's probably what that is. So I felt compelled to ask. But regarding, like, say, regulation and whatnot, you two are both in England, yeah?
We're in
and you said social enterprise. Is that kind of like the equivalent to, in, say, the United States, like a nonprofit?
Yeah, a social enterprise. So it was developed by the government probably about 13 years ago now, to answer some of the issues and problems that were happening with charitable organizations. So charity, apparently the history of charities were that they were mainly set up as philanthropic organizations to move wealthy money into into helping. So there was this sort of play between the well-off, the philanthropists, and the people that needed them. And social enterprises or community interest companies were set up for profit for purpose, and to have three things at the heart of them: people, the planet, and profit, rather than just being profit-led or just being philanthropy-led. So all of the assets and everything within them are only allowed to be to further the purpose of the organization. There's no kind of dividends or shares or anything like that. Certainly in the way we've got it set up, there is other ways of setting them up. So all our work, anything that comes into the company, I mean, people can take a wage and you can, hire people and all of that, but any profit has to go back into furthering the aims of the organization. So it's a really, really, forward-thinking, good business model that it allows you to still apply for funding without being a charity. Nothing's ideal necessarily. There's issues with all of it, but it certainly enabled what we feel we need to do out there in the world and run a company.
Yeah. Thanks for the clarification. Shifting gears a little bit. I'm just going to ask the question, what is sensory herbalism? And Kazzla, if you want to start with this one.
So sensory herbalism is a structure, if you like, of herbalism that Fi and I have been creating and working within for many years now. And we first, when we were out in those fields doing our connection to plants at the very beginning of our degree, we soon realized that our senses, our visual senses, our taste, our touch, our smell, gave us messages from the plants. And that when we talk about talking to plants, the plants talk back. So we have these voice boxes, but when we interact with the plant, they're talking to us. So through their sense, we're able to detect various different molecules that are actually in the plants. We know that through taste, we can taste bitters or sweets or something salty or metallic, and each one of those separate tastes denotes different constituents within the plant. And by touching the plant, anyone stroked a marshmallow leaf lately, felt that velveteen, or a nettle and got stung, we feel through our fingers and through our skin other messaging from the plants. And we wanted to make it really visible to people that you don't actually need to study years and years of science. If you're not scientific and you're scared, if you're not academic, you don't really need to read and write to be able to become a brilliant herbalist. You just need your senses, your innate senses, and time and space to slow down. And as we observed the plants, we saw that certain plant parts came to the fore at different seasons. You want to continue, Fi?
So we started working with the plant parts moving through the year. So spring would be working with the green lush leaves, and a lot of that kind of making vinegars and really benefiting from all of those compounds in the plants that are all of the minerals. And then in the summer, it was all about the fire and fertility and the flowers of the plants, and working more with the heart and circulation. And then autumn is the seed and the harvest time and the nervous system and the breath. So we link the seeds with that, and a lot of those kind of omega oils and the GLAs and things that are in a lot of the seeds. And then in the winter, all of that energy going down into the roots and working with root medicine more in the winter, and the digestive system and processing the bones, the skin. But we just put this idea forward, and we realized that we talked about order within chaos, because we used to go and work with people and be like, you can do this, you can work with this plant, it will tell you. But we realized that people have so many boundaries up to that because of a way a lot of our teaching is, as a whole society, really, that you're taught facts and not led by your own inquiry a lot of the time. So we realized that a system really helped people to feel safe and held, and gave them a way of working. So starting to observe the plants, drawing them, then going in to taste them, meditating and experiencing with them, and then interpreting all of that information into something useful and tangible for themselves and for others. But that gave them a bit of a process to work with the plants. And they could come and do a foundation year with us, but then have the skills to self-study from then on, just to get to know plants and have that confidence and feel creative within it. It was we were trying to order the chaos that people seemed to feel, that filled them with fear and dread when interacting with nature. So sensory herbalism is our sort of answer to that. It's a step-by-step guide of getting to know plants and become your friends, really.
So do you have a herb school where you teach this stuff at?
Yeah. We do. Our whole organization is classed as a school of herbalism. But we have specific venues that we rent. So we don't have a place that's ours that we manage, but we rent places, and we'll plant a herb garden there, and we take people for 4 residential weekends over the year, and then they get a lot of other interaction in between, and homework to do. And
and we run regular online courses and webinars for people to connect and learn more about the way that we see the plant world.
That's been mind-blowing that people can still learn about plants online. It's really blown our minds in the last couple of years. It's like,
yeah, I think of a online herbalism learning as kind of like an addendum to, say, taking an in-person apprenticeship of some sort, because nothing really beats going out, say, like in the old growth forest, and learning from a teacher and being with the plants. But yeah, it's a nice addendum to have, say, books and online platforms and whatever. But so the 5 tools of sensory herbalism are observation, intuition, interpretation, characterization, and plant dream creation. I didn't make that up. I got that from the book. It's called the Sensory Herbal Handbook, and we'll leave a link to that in the show notes, the podcast show notes. But so I'd like to hear about a couple of them, perhaps observation and intuition. I don't know if one of you want to start with, say, observation. Kazzla, do you want to start with that?
Yeah. So observation, again, it's using all of these powers, all of our senses. But one way that we love to share observation with people is through drawing, and getting people to really study the plant. And often the first response from the non-artists is, I can't draw. And we say it doesn't matter what your drawing looks like. We're not judging, no one's judging, and everyone can draw. But when we hold a plant part, or we bring magnifying glasses into it and look at the plant part, maybe we'll dissect areas of flowers and cut open stems so we can see if they're hollow or what's going on inside, and getting people to take the time to just sit and draw. They'll notice whether the stem is hairy or hairless. They'll notice the exact shape of the leaf. And then after they've done a good drawing of a plant, a good long time drawing of a plant, they will never mistake the identification of that plant, because whilst they're drawing, they're smelling. We're often serving tea with it as well, so they're tasting the plant, they're feeling what that plant's tea is actually doing to their bodies, what their physical, emotional response is to the tea. So we love to bring that method of observation into the work we do.
Fiona,
did you want to add to that, or do you want to take on intuition?
Yeah, they sort of lead into each other, really, because Kaz mentioned earlier about the taste and the compounds of the plants, and we can learn that something bitter will stimulate digestive juices, that something with full of saponins will make your saliva frothy, but then taking that another step back into tapping into, how is this actually making you feel? Is there anywhere particular in the body that is experiencing this right now? Are there any thoughts, feelings, or images are evoked by smelling the plant, or by how it's growing, or where it's growing and who with? And even things like what conversations arise if you're harvesting or working with a plant with someone else. And we always say that intuition's a funny thing, because we associate intuition with just like this kind of sixth sense, but actually, that sixth sense it's influenced from all of our experiences, through our whole lives, and maybe even past lives, you know, ancestrally influenced into how we respond to the world around us, how we respond to people, to plants. And each plant will have, you know, its kind of chemical blueprint. And obviously, depending on where it's growing, that might slightly differ even within species, but it'll have this kind of, you know, this basic blueprint as we do, but each individual will interpret that plant in a different way. And that's that real intuitive process. And what we love to do is get people to really note down all of those feelings and experiences, and then go maybe to the books or to our book and see what other people have written and interpret what you've felt or thought. And once you start realizing other people have the same experiences, it then enables you to trust that intuitive process and to be able to interpret into something useful and see patterns within other plants and species, and really start to layer up this understanding of how the plants are communicating. So yeah, I think that leads into that interpretation bit, because we all say it's lovely, you can sit all day in a field having an amazing time with a nettle or a linden tree or a whatever it might be, and that can be healing for you. But if you want to then use that experience for the benefit of yourself or others, or for the trees and plants, you need to interpret those experiences into something more tangible and grounded and useful that you can do with them.
That borderline sounds like magic to me. I've taken a couple herbalism apprenticeships, and we've never done that I remember the activity where, say, everyone goes and visits with a plant, and then you experience your intuition, you experience what you experience with the plant, and then you share. And then a lot of times, you know, the group comes up with kind of similar results. I've never done an activity like that, but I've heard of other schools that do that exercise, and I totally buy it. I totally believe it. I've been to Herbalism conference where we do, say, like a plant sit, and we just hang out with a plant for a bit and then kind of use our intuition to kind of feel what's going on there. And it always amazes me, like, but yeah, what you're saying totally resonates with me, Fiona. Also, I wanted to highlight the whole drawing activity, Kazzla. I love that. A few episodes back, I was interviewing Jesse Wolf Harden, and I grew up drawing. I consider myself an artist, and I stopped drawing for probably like 25 years or something like that, you know. And he challenged me on the episode to draw something, and I finally did. And I chose to draw a chess piece. I drew a pawn. And I'm like, just listening to you, Kazzla, I'm like, no, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start drawing plants. You know, why not? I love that idea. And yeah, I'm not going to judge myself on the final product, and I sure as hell I'm not going to share it on Instagram. But it'll be a great exercise. So thanks for the inspiration for that. Yeah, so I did want to cover your book, the Sensory Herbal Handbook, and maybe the both of you could kind of discuss what's inside and how it's laid out, and maybe some of the creation process, and maybe also shout out the artist and whatnot. So, Kazzla, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, let's shout out the artist. Let's shout out Belle Benfield, who is an amazing botanical artist, and we're actually working with Belle at the moment on a set of oracle cards that we're co-creating as our next project, which is
nice.
Exciting. But yeah, the book, it came together really nicely. We were given, Fiona's mum has a caravan in a beautiful area of England, the Lake District, and she let us go and stay in her caravan for, I think, 5 days. And while we were up there, without any other distractions, just me and Fi and the sunshine in a beautiful place, we decided to visit each of the elements on a different day. So earth, air, fire, water, and spirit. And we just made little pilgrimages to beautiful and sacred spaces and completely immersed in each of the elements. And then came back and did loads of writing. And on one of the days we'd visited a bookshop in town where quite a famous man who writes about tarot and the history of tarot and teaches tarot just happened to be there. So we booked a tarot reading with him, and he came with one of his students back to the caravan and gave us this lovely reading, which in a way really helped to shape the book, because what we've done is split it up into a section that explains the principles of sensory herbalism, and then go into the seasons, and each season has an element, and each seasonal section has 3 particular plants that are prevalent in that season, and we've tried to give practical recipes with the plants, and also a bit of magic with magical ideas and ritual. So a bit of a mix of all of the ways that we're working. And that book's actually, I think we published it in, was it 2018, Fi? Something like that. Does it?
Right. Pre-pandemic, yeah.
Yeah.
Pre-pandemic, and it's really stood that test of the time that's gone through. There's been a few little edits that we've seen that we wanted to make, but we still refer to it. There's lots of previous students that use the book to teach, because something that we do with anyone that we share sensory herbalism with, the primary thing is for them to then go and share their herbalism, because we see the loss of knowledge of herbal medicine as a real terrible thing that's happened to humanity. So anyone that comes and does anything with us is encouraged to then go and share everything that they've learned with everyone. And someone got in touch yesterday to say they're doing a monthly herb club, and they're reading a chapter of our book every month and going out with the group to make the preparations, and that's really heartwarming.
That's awesome.
Fi,
did you have anything to add to that, or?
I'm trying to refer back to your question. You asked a couple of parts to it.
Yeah, I did.
How's the book laid out?
Yeah. It was probably poorly worded, and
then,
basically, yeah. So you kind of cover the history, Kazzla. I want to say maybe, Fi, if you kind of want to like talk about what's inside and kind of how the book's laid out.
Yeah. So one thing, obviously, here in the temperate UK, we have very distinct seasons, but actually the book really is going through the plant parts associated with elements. So it's the leaves, as I said, about spring, the flowers are in summer, but you don't have to have seasons in order to benefit from the book, because each bit has about a different part of the body, and how any kind of disease pattern that arises in that part of the body, whether it's the lungs or the digestive system or even the bones, what could that represent about what's going on in a more deeper emotional or psycho-spiritual level, and how can you get back to what was happening at the start of that picture, that real root cause, and work with herbs on an energetic level, because really deep-seated issues, you need practitioner support, you need a herbalist support to walk you through that journey, that really knows and understands the herbs, that can help you to understand your body more. But in terms of helping support your own emotional body, you can work with herbs in pouches. You can make, vinegars that you can use in your food every day. And as long as the intention's there for why you're working with those herbs, and we really touch on all of that can take you off in whatever direction you're interested in, whether it's the astrology of the herbs, whether it's presentation of disease in the body, whether it's preparations, whether it's food as medicine. We've really got a little bit in each of those 4 areas. Plus, we talk about the spirit of plants, which is like the whole plant, and some of the more magical plants that we work with. We've kind of snuck them in there at the end, really. And then the first part of it is all about, as you've alluded to, our structure of how to get to know the herbs. So we start leading you through that, and then there's a very practical things to do. We've called it the handbook, because it's a bit like a workbook. You can dip into it, but you can also work through it. So yeah, we hope that there's something in there that will pique the interest of anyone that's got any kind of interest in herbs, that can take you off in different directions with it. And be that real book that you want to go and pick off the shelf if you want to reference things as well. So like, ooh, what planet's associated with that herb, or ooh, what constituents does it have in, or what could I make with this herb, so that it will be something you're constantly wanting to pull off the shelf. And when they get really thumbed and well used, and they just feel really lovely when they get like that. Ours are starting to get like that, and it's like, that's what we really intended for it, that it would be people's go-to herbal, really, and answer a lot of the questions that we had. A lot of the herbals we were using at university had lists of constituents, lists of actions, and maybe some uses of the herbs, but not a lot of soul in there. And we wanted to kind of give a bit more of a broad picture, really.
I love that you do call it a workbook, because just flipping through it this morning, pre-show, I was like, it is something you could go back to, and it is a very beautiful book too. But like you said, we want to make it ugly. We want to flip through it so many times that all the pages get dirty and smudged and everything. That means we're using it. It's like a good cookbook. So where would you like to send folks to maybe purchase the book? From your website, or?
No, I think it's probably best from the evil Amazon.
That's all right.
Especially in the States, we can't actually, we're having a terrible time posting abroad at all at the minute. We had this thing called Brexit here, where we left the European Union, and it's we left Europe, so it's caused quite a lot of issues with sending. But we do have lots of other content on our website, SistAs with an as.co.uk. We put up blogs a couple of times a month, really detailed blogs. We've got a new members area launching, the Coven Herbal Secrets, which we're super excited about. That's been quite a long time coming as well. We we run monthly webinars, and we've got lots of e-guides which you can purchase because they're not physical, so that's good too. There's loads of stuff to catch up with, and like free PDF downloads and things like that on our website as well, sistas.co.uk.
Awesome. Well, I almost framed the question as if we're getting out of here soon. I didn't mean to put it that way, but do y'all still have a bit of time, like maybe 20, 30 more minutes or so? I do have a bunch more questions, but that's all good because I know it's been about an hour and about 10 minutes. So
I've got 15 minutes and then so yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, let's do it.
Hit us.
Cool, man. We'll have to have you back for a round two, because I got some good questions here. As I was telling you pre-show, I was asking you about Christopher Hedley, and you just posted a really cool quote of his on your Instagram. When picking herbs, ancestors are standing around you because you're doing what they used to do. You don't necessarily need to speak on the quote per se. I'm just curious. So I studied with Howie Brownstein at the Columbine School of Botanical Studies, and he was a huge fan of Christopher. And in fact, I want to say they hung out. He might have even come to Oregon and hung out with Howie. I'm just curious, from my own personal reasons, if you could tell any stories about Christopher or anything about him.
Yeah. Christopher was like my first herbalist.
Oh.
He used to work in a herb shop in North London that I found myself in as a teenager. And he was a very, very tall man, very, very tall man with a very long white beard. And he was a herb wizard, but he also was a scientist, and he bridged the gap between magic and science in a very beautiful and articulate way. And Christopher was a storyteller par excellence, and he mentored both of us for many years. And one of his favourite sayings that we really were inspired by was that herbal medicine is a broad church. And that makes so much sense, that all of us herbalists can practice in so many different ways, but we're all working towards the same thing. He used to say herbalists will save the planet. And it does feel that we have the power to inspire people, to wake them up to plants. And once you are woken up to plants, of course you want to save the planet. So that's really, behind all the work we do is Christopher's essence. But a nice story about him, one of his visits to the States, I don't know who he went to see, but we were with him on his return, and I had a bit of a problem. I had a boyfriend at the time who had a young son, and his 3-year-old son was completely stuffed up, full of mucus, kept getting chest infections, and I couldn't give him herbs because his mother didn't like me. There was weird family dynamics going on. And I told Christopher, and Christopher, like, his eyes just lit up and he got all sparkly and went, "Oh, I've just learned something amazing from somebody in the States." It was about the dreaming. And he said, if I went and got some mugwort and put the mugwort under my pillow, I could go in the dream space and give the little boy the herbs that I wanted to give him in the dream space. And he was like, go on, go and try it and tell me what happens. And so I was all excited, and I told Fi, and I told another herb student in our group, Sophie, and we all went and started drinking the mugwort and sleeping with the mugwort. And I did go and dream up a healing for this little boy, and he did get much better, which was incredible. But another really incredible thing that happened was one of our dreams, I was walking by a river and Christopher turned up, and Fiona turned up, and Sophie turned up, and we were in the dream together. And when I told Fi, she was like, "Yeah, I dreamed that." And dreamt that, and Chris had dreamt that. So
that's so cool.
A cosmic dream. Yeah.
He used to work with the dream space a lot, and to have a teacher like that was able to connect us in with that. I first met Christopher in my early 20s. His partner Non Shaw, who was another wonderful mentor of ours, was actually my counsellor and herbalist at the time. And then Christopher, it turned out, lectured at not the university we were at, but a local university. And he mentored so many herbalists of that time. And he was so influential on us all because he was a real accessible human being, as well as this amazing practitioner. And him and Non, they'd have some brilliant kind of bickers together and all the rest of it, but they'd also do things like they'd write each other's dreams down. So if Christopher was dreaming that night, Non would have the pencil and paper, and he would wake up and she would note it all down for him, so that they had a log of the dreams the next day. Because you know what it's like when you wake up sometimes and then it's gone, the messages within them. And they really worked together on those magical practices. And we were at a place called Rutland Biodynamics, which is an amazing herb farm in the very flat lands of Middle England. And that was where we heard his lecture about herbal medicine being a broad church. And we were working with Datura as a medicine there. and Christopher had belladonna with him. And it was a misty night, and the mist was hanging over the fields. And we were in this tent. It was all herbalists together. And there was a ceilidh band that we couldn't let go. They said they had to play all night long. And they said they'd never been with people that danced so much and for so long. And we were all there whirling like whirling dervishes, with Christopher staring into his eyes in this like timeless swirl with this belladonna ointment. And it was like, it was really the moment that set our trajectory, because he said Herbalist will save the world. And at that point we were like, we need to do something about this. You know, people didn't even know then what herbal medicine was, a lot of people out there in the world. And we were like, we need to change this paradigm and create this shift. And it was from that moment onwards, really, that it set our trajectory. And then at his death, when Christopher died, it was like a real coming together of the tribe. It was like the great elder of the tribe had fallen. And we were at his funeral together and his wake, the people that gathered there. And we talked at that point about who was going to fill that gap, that was this real bridge between the science, the magic, you know, a lecturer at university that would take people up onto the hill to look through the hawthorn to see the fairies, you know, and this real, and it was like, yeah, we all owe it to the herbal community to stay true to ourselves and not be dragged into what society wants herbalism to be, or, you know, that real herbal medicine is a broad church. We're all permitted to practice herbalism however we see and feel inspired to do so. Like, it's okay. And yeah, we've really, it's really been a backbone of our working, practicing lives, really, having Christopher's presence, and Norn as well.
Oh, I'm glad I asked. Thank you for sharing. I feel like I know him a little bit better now. Yeah, I've only seen a few of his writings here and there. So what a blessing y'all got to study with him and hang out with him. And it occurs to me you probably have a whole section in your book, the Sensory Herbal Handbook, on dreaming with plants. And it sounds like that was Christopher was a huge influence on that. Well, yeah, thank you for sharing. I know we're about out of time. I did want to cover like maybe say one plant, and I also got to shout out your YouTube channel. We've gone 45 minutes and I haven't even mentioned your YouTube channel yet. Dear listener, you have to check out Sistaz on YouTube. They've got some amazing production. It's unlike any herbalism channel I've ever seen. It's way cooler than HerbRally's YouTube channel. So check them out. They got crazy swagger, all sorts of cool clothes and makeup and skits and all sorts of fun stuff. So check out the Sistaz on YouTube. Do you mind maybe if we cover one plant before we get out of here? I'm very curious about daisy. We actually covered daisy a few episodes back, and it's a plant that I'm pretty unfamiliar with as far as, oh, there you go, medicine. For those of you only listening, Fi's got a mountain of daisy in her hand right now. But do you mind spending a couple minutes maybe just chatting about daisy, the magic and the medicinal benefits and whatnot? Fi, if you want to start.
It's all over my laptop now. Daisy, to us, interestingly, is one of the, I mean, also known as bruisewort and like our native arnica, and is full of those saponins that can help break down the blood under the surface that causes bruising, and you know, has these kind of real physical properties like that. But is often the first connection to childhood, making daisy chain, picking the flowers, he loves me not, sort of vibes. And in that, we really associate it with childhood, the beginning, reintroducing innocence and bouncing back from emotional bruising. but it was one of the first herbs that really taught us that we can trust our intuition and that we can communicate with the plants, because we were out harvesting in a thick meadow of daisies, little daisies, Bellis perennis, not the big dog daisies, the little daisies. And when you pick them, they go pop, 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 pop. And it's just so mesmerizing and beautiful. And they just fill your heart with this joy that it's really hard to stop picking them when there's loads of them. It's compulsive. And we collected so many daisies that first time. We hadn't been taught about daisy. We were like, let's just get to know this herb. It's in the same family as calendula. We know it's probably safe as a medicine. So let's start working with it. And we harvested so much of it and decided to make daisy syrup. But the point was that it was like this compulsion to go back and collect more. We had to go and pick Kazz's eldest son from school, who's in his later 20s now. But we couldn't even leave to go and get him because it was so. And then we were like, this is really compulsive. And we said about looking in herbals earlier that you'd often just get constituents and actions. We had to go to Dr. Edward Bach to find out more about daisy and the flower essences. And he says daisy for compulsive patterns of behavior. And we felt that, it was like it had instilled in us that quality that it can help, this compulsion to pick more. And and that was this real kind of eureka moment that there's lots of different ways of interpreting your interactions with the herbs that can help to learn about them.
Yeah, and as we watched the daisies, we took on our own framework and really observed the daisies. We saw that if you walk across the lawn and you tread on the daisies, they flatten, but then they bounce back up. And if you mow a lawn, they really cleverly lie down flat or just grow very short stems. And that showed us that it was like in their signature to be resilient. And even though they're innocent and playful and joyful, they're super resilient, and they're able to gift us that quality of being able to bounce back fully functioning and okay, not holding on to any baggage or being cynical. They give us the ability to let all of that go. And we've made loads of daisy syrup that year, and we went out to sell daisy syrup and soon realised what a beneficial respiratory medicine the daisy was. Absolutely wonderful for various different chesty issues, bronchitis, coughs, but also the daisy as a tea. The daisy has a slight bitter aspect, great for the digestion. There's a lymphatic note through the daisy. You can see that with the cousin, the calendula, known as our native arnica, as Fi mentioned, bruisewort. Daisy really has got this plethora of different actions and compounds and constituents, a really complex little flower we've got there. And when I went to a book recently and daisy was described as an invasive weed. And whenever we see these kind of descriptions, it just brings to mind that nature is so intelligent that she proliferates these plants that are uber useful around us so that we have plenty, like the dandelion, like the nettle. These so-called weeds are often the ones with the most important medicine. And we love to draw on the abundant ones, the ones that are here all around us, over the ones that are endangered and more difficult to find and harvest. So, and the daisy's so easily recognisable for people as well. People already know daisy. So wonderful little plant.
Thank you for sharing. Oh, go ahead, Fi.
Oh yeah, we really felt like with all this daisy syrup that we had that year, we had to buy this huge American fridge, double-fronted fridge, put in our shed to house all the daisy syrup that we'd made. And we really felt that Daisy was saying, get me into everyone, that people need this joy, they need this playfulness with nature back. And we put her in quite a lot of different herbal drops that were for these sort of more subtle, energetic, emotional shifts, and really got them out there. And now it's really nice to see, 25 years on, that Daisy is a lot more known about. It's a lot more prominent in the herbalist materia medica. It really wasn't back then very popular at all. And it's nice to see that she's had a revival, and maybe we played a very small part in that, but that there was a part played all the same because she asked us to. And we like to sort of step up when the herbs give us an indication that there's some quest that they're challenging us to do. We always take it on and relish it and get out there and do what's been asked of us. So that was one with Daisy.
Well, it just occurred to me that the last episode where someone mentioned Daisy, that person's also from the UK. It's an herbalist by the name of Nicole Rose, who has the Solidarity Apothecary and the Frontline Herbalism podcast. And I believe it's also it's not only in the Sensory Herbal Handbook, but it's also in her book, The Prisoners Herbal. So maybe there's something there. But yeah, I'll try to help out over here in the States and popularize Daisy as well. So
yeah,
I love it. I know we're about at time, but if you don't mind, I wanted to read just a segment of one of your recent Instagram posts, and I'm going to point people to go to follow Sistaz on Instagram because to read the whole post. But I just really liked it. I thought it was very beautifully written. I don't know which one of you two wrote it, and then we'll get out of here. And does that sound good?
Lovely.
Awesome. So, and again, this is just a segment of like a lengthy post that y'all wrote. So herbs and plants are more than just physical objects to be harvested and used, quote unquote, for their medicinal properties. They have a deep spiritual significance that can help us to connect with the natural world and tap into our inner wisdom. By spending time with plants, we can learn from their resilience, adaptability, and life-giving qualities. We can also cultivate a deeper understanding of the cycles of life and death that are integral to the natural world. And actually, I just thought that was really beautiful. The whole post is beautiful, and it kind of encompasses a lot of what we talked about here today. And I thought it'd be a really fun way to wrap up. So thank you both so much, Kaz and Fi, for your time. I had a blast learning more about you and your work. And where would you like to point people to? Again, the website, probably seedsistas.co.uk, but anywhere else or any other projects you want to talk about?
Let's do a part 2 together.
Yeah, let's do it.
We could be lovely to talk to you about some of the more shady plants. We mentioned the Chura and the Belladonna, but it'd be really nice to talk about what we call in the UK the Schedule 20s, the plants that are not prescribed as often today by medical herbalists because there's a lot of fear surrounding them, something that we're doing our best to change.
Awesome. Yeah, let's definitely do a round 2. I wanted to talk about doctrine of signatures and all sorts of other fun topics. So thanks again, you two, for your time, and we'll see y'all in the next episode of the Herbalist Hour. Take care.
Yes.
Hey everyone, this is Mason with HerbRally. Thanks so much for watching today's video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and also go ahead and subscribe. We come out with new herbal content each and every week. If you didn't know, HerbRally also lists Herbalism events. We list Herbalism events chronologically. We list them also by state. So you could just go ahead and search by Oregon or Wisconsin or wherever you live. You can find out what Herbalism events are happening in your neck of the woods. We also list Herbalism events, virtual herbal events. So if you can't make it to an in-person conference or plant walk, we list lots of virtual events as well. To find out more, you could go to herbrally.com/events or herbrally.com/virtual. But if you can help it, I would highly recommend trying to go to an Herbalism conference. Those are some of the best learning experiences I've ever had, and that's where you can find different herbal teachers, and then maybe you could perhaps take their apprenticeship. But yeah, just do what you can. Get out there and learn about the herbs, like yarrow, dandelion, corn, all the above, like all the medicinal herbs. And we'll see you out there. Hope to see you at an herb conference. All right, bye.